I'm Sarah Garvin Rogers.
And you've had a long relationship with G4G. Can you sort of trace that back to the very beginning? Because in 1993, this started, and it started with Tom Rogers, your husband. There must have been a prehistory to that. What went before 1993 that led to him being instrumental in creating this?
I've given thought to this because, of course, Gathering for Gardner, as the years went by, was Tom's great passion. And I believe the thinking that went into it as Tom founded it, he was, of course, a great follower of Martin Gardner, and of course had personally met him and spent time with him and knew Martin Gardner's interests. And Tom was also an early attendee of the TED conference. He was also a participant in the earliest days of the International Puzzle Party. So I believe all of those elements came together, and Tom conceived of a conference in which attendees came from all of the fields and interfaced with one another. So thus you had musicians, mathematicians, you had magicians, probably, very notably.
Yes.
And his idea was that you would bring people who in the beginning probably were all followers of Martin Gardner, and you would get them all together, and good things would happen. And as it turned out, that's precisely been the evolution of Gathering for Gardner.
Well, I have to say he had great insight, because you have to explain to people sometimes why Martin was successful, and it's because he did draw upon all of these elements. And so Tom obviously had a great insight that this is the way to success. Did he have already contacts in all of these communities, or did he have to develop those?
No, he started from scratch. He would call Elwyn Berlenkamp, you know, the great math professors. He would just call them up and say, this is what I think we ought to do. Would you help? And I think the special dimension of Gathering for Gardner that is Tom's unique contribution is he wanted it to be non-hierarchical. In other words, if there's going to be participation, everybody's at the same level, and thus the exchange gift.
Yes.
I mean, you can be, you know, Nathan Mirenvold, you can be anybody, but you can also be a student in high school.
Yes.
And you exchange gifts as peers. So I think that was a special aspect that Tom went out of his way. No prizes, no one gift is better than another gift. No attendee is of higher rank than another attendee.
Yes.
So since Tom attended many significant conferences,
Yes.
this was his personal conclusion as to what he wanted to develop.
Now you had, as you mentioned, an art background, a historian background, or art?
Yeah, I would have veered, had I been able to have that as a career, I'd have been the curator. You know, I went to school at Tulane in New Orleans and loved the old houses. And
In the past year or so, you have returned to the art world.
it's the best way I know of to be around extremely interesting and likable people. And I think math art, which I suppose some galleries and people would perhaps not accord the same status of pure art, to me it's a natural blend.
Well, you've had an interesting background, because I would guess 99% of people in America do not think math has anything to do with art. But you've been immersed in the intersection thereof.
Well, when you think about Bach and the great musicians, be they the Beatles. You know, there's poetry, but there's also the parsing, there's the mathematical, if you will, intervals that anyone with the expertise and interest can analyze those.
So is there anything about G4G that people don't know, that you think that, you know, attendees don't appreciate?
When you take someone of Tom's brilliance, and his energy was just bottomless,
Yes.
and his interest and passion also, you know, it was just pretty much, he was calling people all over the world 24/7,
Yes.
especially in those early years, getting a critical mass, a nucleus that was disparate enough and coming from all countries. You know, you would have Russians, Chinese, Japanese, etc.
Well, I'm sure we have to draw this to a close, so I'd like to ask about what you're doing now. What your years in corporate America were involved with hospital designs and things like that, but now you're getting back into that. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, we have this special project. We're doing a senior housing complex that I would like to live in. So I'm able to, you know, pick all the colors and have a lot of features to it that I would find enjoyable. And at the same time, so that's a new model for me. I like to do new things, but using a lot of old skill sets and knowing how to put together management teams. I will not be running this one,
Okay.
as I used to run some of the hospitals that I built, but also simultaneously opening the art gallery and figuring out how to market for that gallery.
Well, let me close by playing the role that everybody wants to play, and that is to thank you for your involvement in the continuing success of G4G. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been my great pleasure.